much not least, in always the awesomest sport coats around, we have Mike Muhney. And if you are in technology, I highly recommend you speak with Mike. I'm going to hand it over to you. After Mike is done speaking, then all the speakers of this workshop come stand here, and we'll have audience members ask your questions.
Thank you, Nancy. Good afternoon, everybody. So let me ask you a question. I don't have time to hear your responses, but I want to ask you this question. Have you ever really, in your quiet moments, contemplated that there was a point in the history of mankind that somebody thought of something first that didn't exist? Did you ever contemplate that there was a beginning with everything that surrounds us today? Let's take the simple chair. Have you ever thought that at some point in the history of mankind, back in the caveman era, I presume, somebody said there's got to be something better than a round rock to sit on, and thought of the chair? The long deceased poet laureate of America, Carl Sandburg, once said and is quoted as saying, "Nothing happens unless first a dream." Think about that. You all are dreamers. We're all dreamers. Now, some of you here might still be dreaming about that thing that you still would hope to accomplish in life. Maybe some of you here are already living your dream. Maybe some of you here have lived the dream that came to fruition. It doesn't matter. Nothing happens unless first a dream. I am an underdog. To this day, I still see myself as an underdog in life. I was born and raised in Chicago as a blue-collar construction industry kid, first kid in my family to have a college education. I don't have much time to talk about. Obviously, I'm restricted to answering 2 questions posed to us as speakers on this panel. Number 1, describe my inner rebel, and number 2, describe the path I took to get there authentically. So let me tell you my inner rebel. I just described one aspect of it. I am an underdog. I'm somebody that wants to be something to myself. I want to be somebody that has self-dignity and esteem and feels like I accomplished what I was destined to become, and I can tell you at my age, and I'm just further down the road of life than you are, but I'm still on the same road of life, and there's no end to the desire to achieve all that you've been created to achieve. I've achieved some things in life, some hugely successful that I'll briefly mention before I'm done here. But that's just a point in the journey of life. I don't know, and I probably never will, but I'm on a discovery path until my dying day of what I was meant to be. My inner circle is I want to aspire to be something greater than people give me credit to become, that I can become more, and the fact that I don't have a Harvard MBA or a PhD from any stellar university doesn't mean that I can't innovate and create and change the world and impact it. That's a little bit of the inner rebel in me, okay? That's the fire in me, and that's what you've got to have to make it through the world we live in today. So let me tell you the path that happened serendipitously in my life that authenticated my ability to continue this journey of self-discovery. I said at one point in time, nothing existed until somebody dreamed it and then executed with it. My best friend and I, back in 1985, 4 years when the PC industry was still in its early youth, its infancy, we had a dream to work together. We quit our corporate jobs. I started my career with IBM in the mainframe era. Most of you are young here. Believe it or not, there was a time where there was not a PC industry. There was no technology available to the majority of the culture, just mainframes. I was in that era. We had a dream to start a company and create a software product. We raised our first effort with an angel investor when it came down to that final meeting with him to raise money so that we could live our dream. He said, I do want to invest in your company, but here are my terms. My terms are, I'll invest $50,000, but I want 51% of the company, and I want exclusive check writing control. At that moment, despite our desire to achieve the ability to stay and to start this business together, And to do what we wanted to do, we knew that was a bad deal, and courageously we said, that's a bad deal. We turned it down. He kept saying, well, why? Make a long story short, this is what he said. This is how people can categorize you. He said, well, what do you two guys know? You're just salespeople. Okay? People will try to put you down. I told you I'm a blue-collar kid. It didn't matter. It was the fire in me to still become something despite people like that. We did raise money from another angel, $100,000, and $85,000 later, Pat and I, the other co-inventor of the product I'm going to mention in a moment, said to each other, this dog ain't going to hunt. We failed. It failed, right? The angel was coming down from Boston in about 3 weeks, and he thought everything was fine. We took advice from a man that we sought out for advice, and this is what he said to Pat and me. Pat and I were both career sales guys. He said, look, you two guys are smart guys. Next week is July 4th, 1986. Why don't you have an 8 until noon brainstorm breakfast and see if you can come up with an idea before you throw in the towel. We could afford coffee and toast. We were at a restaurant on July 4th from 8 until noon, and I to this day still have the proverbial napkin from conceiving at that breakfast and challenging ourselves to come up with a deeper, clearer idea, the search within you to discover that you are capable of doing more than you thought, including the people that put you down on top of that. We came up with an idea that we were excited about. And for the next 3 weeks, we worked our tails off to architect a software product. This category of the software product that we came up with didn't exist. I'm a true pioneer, and I'm not saying that casually, and I'm not saying it arrogantly. And what I am saying, though, is that we didn't realize at that moment that we were to be identified for the rest of our lives as the two pioneers that started and created a global industry that I'll finish off with in a moment. For the next 3 weeks, we worked our tail off. The angel came down from Boston, and we took him to lunch, and we said, John, we have bad news, but we have good news. And fortunately, he was a good investor, not a creep, an arrogant guy like the first one that spit in our face. So we told him the bad news, and he said, well, what's the good news? Tell me what your idea is. And we told him, and when we were all done, not knowing our fate, this is what he said. He looked Pat and me in the eye, and he said, I didn't invest in Margin Maker, this other product. I invested in the two of you, and I like this idea better. Do you need any more money? And we said, surprisingly, yes. And he said, how much? And we said, $50,000. He literally opened up his coat, pulled out his checkbook, and wrote us a $50,000 check on the spot. We went back to the guy that suggested we have this breakfast. Think about the impact of moments in your life, moments that might seem insignificant, but make a complete difference and impact on the world, even unbeknownst to you. We went back to the guy that said have the breakfast, and we brought him up to date. We took your advice, we had the breakfast, we created an idea, we created a software product. As we've architected it, we're ready to begin programming it, blah, blah, blah. The angel came down, we told him the idea. He liked it so much, he wrote us a $50,000 check, and here's what he said. I like that idea too. As a matter of fact, I know two other guys that might like this as an investment. Let me pull together a meeting, and you guys do your pitch. And we're both just underdog, poor, blue-collar kids. Nobody would give the time of day, and of course, salespeople are a dime a dozen, right? As people think. We did our pitch, and those three guys wrote us $400,000 in checks. And we were on our way. And 9 months later, on April 1st, April Fool's Day, April 1st, 1987, we released a software product called ACT. ACT with an exclamation mark. It was an acronym. The name, I even had to come up with the name. Try to challenge yourself to come up with a name of what you do. That's hard. Just a name. Try to get a URL today. Good luck, right? Okay? ACT stood for Activity Control Technology, but it was always ACT. Well, ACT was the very first product that created a category of software because another one didn't exist that it fit into, so we had to create that too, called Relationship Management. Today, known as CRM. a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry. And every CRM company out there today is my grandchild or my great-grandchild or my great-great-grandchild. But it stemmed from two guys whose backs were up against the wall, challenged by a guy, and giving ourselves the courage to continue to persevere in the face of obstacles and failure and defeat and going back to the corporate world, but we didn't give up. So I know I'm past my time. That's why Nancy put me up here. There's a lot more. I haven't even started to tell you anything. I haven't even begun, but I will finish with this to encourage every one of you in this room. Think about this. In fact, if you have a pen, you might want to write this down, because it's that powerful of a quote that has inspired me often in my dark days, in my moments where I feel like I'm still a failure, where I'm still that underdog, and that's not going to go away. It's the ability to overcome that that's so essential. Here's the quote. Of all, now I'm going to stop here and just say, think about that in the first two words of a quote from a poet. There's no more room for excuses. There's no more room for doubt. It's said and done. Of all sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest are these, what might have been. Rebels do not live in the zone of what might have been. Rebels live in the zone of innovation and what can be, and execute to make it happen.